have a strong belief that the way we shape spaces also shapes society. I think it's still the architect's responsibility to do so.
Mariana Cabugueira is a Portuguese architect working at the frontier of digital design in the profession. She is the founder of MC Studios, an architecture and design practice that specialises in designing projects for both the physical environment and creating immersive architecture for the Metaverse. Mariana built her career at Zaha Hadid Architects, followed by a stint at Web3 company Wilder World, creating a digital city twinned with Miami. Founded in 2023, MC Studios is at the forefront of AI-powered design, with Mariana not only teaching and running workshops, but also leading architecture towards a hybridized practice of virtual, immersive, and physical. How do you go about master planning a metaverse city twinned with a real-life city?
It was super crazy. 11,000 plots in 2 weeks. Not even like the biggest grasshopper script would make 11,000 plots designed from scratch, ready to be sold in 2 weeks.
Pick out any sort of key pieces of advice for young people moving forward.
The gender was extremely important, I believe, to be so uncommon, but still, going for it. Like, I don't care. I'm the only one in the room, I don't care. I'm the only one speaking for most of the events on my side of gender, I don't care. I do it anyway.
Mariana, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
One question that I like to start with all the guests is, why architecture? What is it about a career in architecture that kind of keeps you interested, keeps you going, and kind of coming back for more?
So I wanted to be an architect. Actually, I wanted to paint walls when I was really younger.
Okay.
Like around 4, 5. And then my parents kind of tricked me into architecture when I was 6. I think they didn't want me to be a construction worker, so I kind of did a little shift in career. So I decided really early, and then with time, I actually fell in love with it quite before uni and so on. I believe there is like some kind of satisfaction and also power, obviously, that comes with building spaces for people and improving spaces and improving people in a reciprocal relationship. And for that reason, I kind of felt like I could be the intermediator between people in space and living. And especially, I'm a big fan of history and sociology and anthropology. And I have a strong belief that the way we shape spaces also shapes society. I think it's still the architect's responsibility to do so. So architecture was always on my mind and heart.
So what was that sort of, so you're from Portugal originally. Yeah. What was that original sort of, upbringing like? And I know you studied in Portugal and then later in London. What were your sort of learnings from university and from those early days and understanding architecture, I suppose?
Portugal has a very strong culture of living, a very strong dwelling that has been quite, how can I say, consistent in identity, the way you live and the way you build spaces for living. And that was a very big lesson I had since when I was growing up as an architect or even as a civilian in Lisbon. And that kind of created a big sense of place in me and the understanding of space. And then it was because the university was not there yet when it came to the actual tools and the mindset for future living that made me leave the country for another one. And it was for no other reason but to look for more knowledge and to look for a bigger skill set. I think it was literally skill set. I was a very strong theorist, and that's something that you learn in Portugal a lot, how to question things, but I really lacked the tools. And it was by acknowledging this when I was around 24 or 25 that I proposed my parents to help me and finance me to leave the country and look for more. And also I believed in some very controversial things in my country that they were not so controversial back in the UK or back in London. So one of the things was a refurbishment. And Lisbon especially is going through some kind of a fever of bringing the past to the present and refurbishment after refurbishment. So there's not a lot of new builds.
Sure.
And my final thesis actually had a whole convent on the site, and it was very old. I did not see a lot of value in it, so I went forward without even thinking much that we should replace it and build something new for people that actually have new practices, a new way of living. And that was so controversial that it was like going across all unis. That was this girl that wanted to destroy, and it was religious too, so imagine the shock. And So that was actually, I mean, now I'm nothing, but then back then it was a bit of like a struggle, because
Sure.
then the tutors didn't want to take my work on, right? They were kind of scared. And I believe that what we do now and what we did in the past actually created a footprint, that some sort of a DNA that can be kept and passed and mutate, kind of like a Charles Darwin theory of, but in urban conditions, that buildings mutate and they adapt to our new living. And I believe that there's some sort of DNA that passes through buildings. And when I started thinking about this back in Lisbon, it was really weird for them to hear this. And I remember they were finding it really odd, almost like witchcraft kind of thing. I called it an energy. And then when I came to London, it was actually, in architecture, was actually base knowledge for the principles of parametricism, that there is a parameter that passes through every building and through time and keeps a linear and a constant identity in the city, although it evolves. And that was a given in London, in the school that I came to, design research. So I felt immediately, okay, I belong here. And it's just a matter of context, so I changed my context.
So with that experience at the AA, finding yourself, what was that experience like, and sort of how you were able to sort of evolve in your own skill sets, I suppose?
Well, in the beginning, I felt I was the worst one, like really bad. And they usually only accept like 40 people, and there were 41 that year. And I promise you, I was convinced I was 41. I was so convinced, because I had no skill sets whatsoever. And then maybe because there's something that is very Portuguese in me, which is very Cristiano Ronaldo. There is, if you don't know how to do it, you work 3 times more. And that's a very Portuguese mindset. So I was just, working all time, nights and day and night and day and night and day. And that's that usually you believe that compensates the lack of knowledge. It's the excessive amount of experience. So I worked the hell out of it. And that made me overcome my fears towards softwares. And there was a lot of softwares. It was like 8 softwares in 6 months. It was crazy. And then I kind of adapt really well to them. And made it through as, like, I think a good one. I'd like to believe.
And does that sort of experience, easily lead on to, your position at Zaha? There's obviously a close connection between those types of schools and that practice. How was that, sort of, I suppose a lot of people listening will think of Zaha as this amazing practice that they would love to, dream to work at. Would you kind of talk about how and why you got that position and what that was like?
I would say in first instance, you think that it's the skill set, and it does make sense. And that when you're very talented or you know a lot of softwares, you're able to be a good employee. But I would also like to believe there's something else besides that. And now that I'm an employer, I'm 100% sure that it's more than just their skill set. And obviously there is a big side of hiring that I think everyone should know, that it's also circumstantial. Sometimes you're needed, sometimes you're not needed. And this has nothing to do with your skill set or with your personality or character. But when there's a position and you're going for that position, you're many, I believe that your character and your truth and your transparency, they really, it is the make or break.
What was that experience like? I know you spent 5 years at Zaha. What was that experience like working on, international projects? I know they have kind of a cluster system within the office. How was that experience, and maybe the pressure, and was it full of late nights and things like that?
Yes, it was horrible. No, I think people would like to think so, and there's like a rumor that it is like so. It's a very top-heavy company, extremely, and it's more and more top-heavy. But I would like to say that the lower part where I actually belong to, or all of those 5 years, it is. I never felt a competition. Or maybe I see competition differently. I do see it as like entertaining, fun, and a reason to come back later and come back harder and do it stronger. So maybe in my perspective, it was more like we are friends or we are colleagues that are trying to make something better all together. And also the way you work and the workflow, it's very much like so. There's an initial competition amongst everyone, but it's not really a competition. It's what's the best sketch for the brief. Everyone is doing a sketch, right? And then the best sketch for the brief goes through. Some people take it personally when your sketch doesn't go through, but the reality, and now as director, it is that there's a best project for that brief. It doesn't mean that it's the best project, that you are the best, the other one is the worst. There's one for the brief, and we are all trying to look for that one. And when you find it, then traditionally you spread that sketch amongst everyone. Okay, now everyone tries and makes it better. And that's the traditional workflow in a project for Zaha, or like big projects especially, right? I'm talking about gigantic infrastructures. And then everyone has a say. Everyone has their own little part of their design. And if you're not designing the exterior, you're designing the interior. You're helping the exterior to improve. So I didn't feel that competition. I did feel that it was very loaded, extremely top heavy, like I said. And there is an excessive amount of time that you're working for. There's a lot to be said when it comes to rewards. A lot to be said about that, and to learn how much you're rewarded and in what chapter. But when it comes to competition, I think that's not what defines the experience.
How tangible is the architecture for, someone in the early career? Because obviously, moving from a sort of exploratory section of a university into a practice with parametricism and things like that. And I suppose it kind of links to the latest sort of conversations about, metaverse architecture that we'll kind of come on to. How tangible is sort of physical architecture in the practice? And for young people kind of moving through, is it all about formal and abstract and things like that? And how do they get the sort of nuts and bolts of architecture?
Tangible. I can't really understand what you mean with tangible, because if there's one thing that I learned after Zaha, and that would lead us to the Metaverse talk, it was a heavy digital practice and a very digital way to deal with architecture, fully digital way to deal with architecture. I never left the computer. I never did like a on-site kind of visit. So it was fully on screen for 5, almost 6 years. So that made it less tangible, and it made us view architecture from those cameras, right from a software camera, which is a very different way to see architecture. And that is also very helpful for the way you do architecture for virtual worlds. How tangible, as in how the parameters that we use to design it. I like to use parameters that are closer to physical ones. So I would still, try to do this. This is 1 meter. So what does it mean, this little corridor that you see in your... But you do use a constant comparison to the physical build and the structure, especially. I'm a fan of challenging structure, but not too much, like still keeping a common sense of how structure behaves for that type of geometry. And you would be stopped immediately if you're doing design that is completely out there or abstract. Like, I think what you have in mind is very abstract. You'd be stopped immediately, very early on.
So with your career within the practice, you kind of move your way up and then evolve into another kind of a left field position of metaverse architect at a startup Web3 company. Talk to me about how, I suppose, one, how that opportunity came about, and two, how you kind of made sense of it as an architect.
Well, it was a controversial one because I was the first one that I knew who was joining as an architect Web3, first of all. And then the first person I knew who was actually in the trenches of the metaverse. Right. So back then it was just like a little word, and I'm also super skeptical, and I was obviously super skeptic about it. And then I got the invite because my work was being published out there virtually, and it did have a lot of characteristics for good spatial, I would say the correct way to do architecture in the future. I don't want to sound too arrogant, but it is true, at least in its core. So then I was approached by the CEO, and they proposed me the role. I said I need time to think. And then obviously there are some very important weights in this scale. It's not an architect's salary whatsoever, because it's not an architecture in the architecture industry. And that was very important. So the company had I don't know if it was 300 million investment in 2019 or something, but it's a very different way to do business, and it's also very risky. It's not like an employee kind of situation. It's like you join, the way you enter, it's the way you live, right? It's like, and it's also a very American way to do it. So I knew it was going to be risky. I knew it was going to be high rewarded, like super high rewarded. I knew it was going to come once in a lifetime, and I was 33, and I knew I was a lead as well, and I knew that being a lead in my office was going to take me a long time, and to prove that skill and to actually nurture the skill as lead. And I could tell that it was going to be like a long, long time with lack of reward for that. So I thought, okay, I'm going to join as an architect director. I'm going to have my own studio, my own little department. And it was very ambitious project, very ambitious. And if we are going to do Metaverse, if you're going to do a virtual world, I hope architects are building it from foundation. So I then told my director, and I asked the CEO, even with that crazy amount of what was proposed and on the table for me, I asked him to wait for me for 3 months because I was finishing a very important project, Tower C for Beijing, for Shenzhen. And then out of respect also for the team, I told my director in 3 months I will leave, and then left Zaha after 5 years, 6 years for that.
And with that transition, how do you go about master planning a metaverse city that's twinned with a real life city?
It was super
What's
crazy.
that process look like?
It was super crazy. It was crazy because it was a lot of people treating a city plan and literally a top view in a very unconventional but uninformed way to do planning, which is normal because none of them are architects. So the first impact was like, whoa, there's a lot of very wrong ideas here, not in like ethically wrong, but more like and they don't see planning as planning that works, right? Because we are architects, we know. So when I got there, and the ambitions were also crazy. And I remember that we had like a month. I became then the lead of urban planning, actually, because I started giving some lectures on what's urban planning. And then I became the lead of urban planning back then. And I remember that the ambition was like 11,000 plots in 2 weeks. Right. And that was crazy. And then you're like, not even like the biggest grasshopper script would make 11,000 plots designed from scratch, ready to be sold in 2 weeks or a month. And that was interesting because like telling a CEO who has no architecture knowledge that, at 11,000 plots, you need half a year to design from scratch, or like a gigantic team to make it in 3 months at least. So that was crazy. But it was also kind of, it's an exciting challenge, right? It makes you worried at night and think like, and then because it's a startup, you really need to think about the return. When is the return? When are you giving the company a return? Which you don't think when you are like a conventional practice. Sure. But when a startup is like, what am I giving the company in 2 weeks of work and so on? But it was exciting. It was different. It was extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah, extreme.
And what? I suppose how do you then go on and I suppose gain the confidence to start a practice on your own?
Well, I think people start their own practices obviously with different motivations, but maybe I could split them in like two. You either start your own practice because you want to not be someone else's employee, or you want to have control of your own future. And I think there's another reason for someone to start your own practice. It comes from almost some sort of rage of seeing things that are not doing correctly that you could do better. And I am the second case. I constantly saw something being done that I thought I can do better. I can do that better. And it's not, this uninformed idea that, oh, maybe I can do better, or like I'm better. No, it is knowing with your core that you can deliver better. And that accumulates over the years, and then it's like, I'll do it now. And and then I jumped.
And then you jumped.
Yeah.
In terms of your practice, I know you kind of talk about the relationship between the physical and digital. How important do you think that is as, I suppose, as the type of architecture you're producing? And What are the sort of propositions that live between those two spaces?
You mean what's common between them?
Well, I suppose in terms of the projects you're producing, is the ambition that they exist in both worlds?
Right. It's a good question. So far, none of the clients comes from a building that is translated, my clients, from physical to digital. You have to convince one or the other one. You either convince the one that came for the physical to have a digital version, or the one that came for an immersive experience, and you say, well, why don't we make it phygital?
Sure.
And so they come from different industries. But I believe they will probably, when they see the benefit of having both, it will be most likely a common practice to have both on contract. I don't know if it's actually more beneficial to have them coming for both, because you'll probably lose money in the equation. But
in terms of the relationship between, I suppose, the physical and the digital, obviously a lot of the sort of virtual experiences that are produced, they contain things like, seeming gravity, elements that we're kind of familiar with to a certain point, and like you mentioned earlier, some element of structure, if you will. They're not, you're not a floating cloud that wanders around a space. What's the importance of having that, I suppose, tangible nature of you living that experience as a human, I suppose? Yeah,
I think that's a very common question that I get. In reality, I know that we have no limits when we imagine a space that is done from scratch, but the reality is, besides the limitations, the virtual limitations, we are building in an unconventional space, but for very conventional people. And we are still extremely conventional when it comes to understanding of having an embedded vocabulary of space. Like, when I say vocabulary, I mean like what the door is and what we expect from a door, and the way we do navigation. It all comes from this embedded vocabulary of space that we created along the time. Not a long time, like 2000 something. So it will take some time to replace that vocabulary with something else that is abstract, and we will still seamlessly understand how to navigate within. So for now, you either take the direct approach and you copy what's there physically, and you call it the twin city, because people do feel more attached. It's easier to sell because it's a direct representation of our vocabulary. Or you take a very soft approach of changing the paradigms, changing the rule sets a little bit, and to introduce new vocabulary that is just softly embedded in space.
Pushing.
Pushing, but very slowly, right? And that's my approach.
With your sort of recent project, the Saudi Arabia airport, could you kind of talk about that slightly, just in terms of how does that type of project come about, and also I suppose, how are people experiencing that space, and the value that you're kind of bringing as an architect to that sort of idea?
Right. So the Saudi airport is actually a commission project. So it comes with a brief, it comes with a client, and there's only so much an architect can change about it. But I always make sure that I change a little bit of what the initial intention is from a client mindset, and what can an architect bring that is new and more ambitious as well. So we started with the brief for the current airport for Saudi, for Riyadh, is actually to make it an urban experience, not just a little intermediary space, which is usually an airport, right? It's an in-between kind of condition that comes with not a lot of identity, that still has a lot of issues when it comes to logistics, that hasn't been catching up much with the technology. If you think about it, the way we board and the way we onboard and the way we check in is very conventional for many years. So it changed very less when it comes to introducing technology, and it has a lot of potential to change with technology, because actually everything is technologically ruled, and your step-by-step is extremely driven by technology, but no one is actually changing it. And that came with the brief of the airport. So the idea was to change it and to make it even more ambitious, and to actually introduce XR and to introduce an app, and which is also something that is being done in Singapore. And how can you improve your user experience inside of an airport, right? That is not just, discover your gate, and then after the gate you relax a bit, and then you you kind of spend your time around still with a bit of nervousness and some stress. So how can you relieve that stress, make it entertaining, giving you all the information that you need before traveling to make you more relaxed and to change the experience of traveling, basically. And that's what the team decided to do, was like to take that challenge and to combine that with beautifully designed spaces. In the past year, we have been challenged to revolutionize the traditional concept of the airport and to create a new airport that embodies the new Saudi visions for 2030. The mission was to merge Saudi culture and identity together with top-notch technology, computational design, and artificial intelligence. A primary transportation network connects the main head house to 4 sunken piers and 2 unique sunken luxury residences. The recreation of the passenger experience is at the core of the project. What we experience from landside, airside, and eye level is one of the main principles for design. As you enter this highly interconnected new world, you begin a journey that is done above ground and underground, from piers to residences.
I suppose, what are the realities of that project? Is it there to kind of show a future vision, I suppose, for the client?
I hope so. For the client, it's his project, right? It belongs to him. It's not mine anymore. But the intention for the built version, I would assume it's a percentage of it, not the whole. And then for me, it's definitely to interrogate the way we do spaces for airports, to interrogate the archetype of airports, and to encourage the future of traveling 100%.
So it's kind of a research point that kind of asks the wider question about airport travel and air travel generally. Interesting. In terms of the metaverse and I suppose the integration of AI, you know, metaverse was very much a sort of hot topic for a period of time, and now AI is kind of somewhat, you know, sat on top of it. I know in terms of a lot of the stuff you're doing, it's those kind of two things sitting together and in between each other. How has that sort of change kind of come about, and what are those kind of future things that you're linking in with AI?
It's a funny way to put it, because it is true that commercially we started hearing about metaverse before we started hearing about AI, but they are not the same thing. One doesn't replace the other one, but one needs the other one. So metaverse is and was proposed as a vision. It is, as the name itself says, the meta. It's the arena, right? It's a vision. And we had someone selling that vision, unfortunately called Meta, but sold the vision, sold the arena, we saw it, and then everyone was expecting to see it materialize, and it didn't. And the person who actually promised the vision knew that it wouldn't materialize in the same capacity that we do predict with our creative minds. So the vision was set. The vision was set to the side, and then came the tool that actually powers the vision, and the tool is here. And actually, it was very smart, because now what Meta is doing is investing on the tool that will bring back the vision to be materialized. And we are living in that in-between moment, which is it's great. It's exciting. It's a new tool. It's an enabler. Obviously, on the very surface side of things of AI, right? On the surface side, it's actually an enabler of creativity. For creators, it is a playground, right? And that will be one of the key foundations of Metaverse, right? Everything that is due to tailored spaces made to you, they will be materialized in something that is digital, but that has the three-dimensionality, but was informed by your data, by your numbers, and that's AI.
Yeah, completely. In terms of the tools, I know we keep sort of talking about the tools. How important do you think it is for kind of young students coming through to grasp these tools? And I suppose a lot of students in universities struggle with learning them. You know, it's not necessarily prescriptive about, you know, how and when to use these tools. And I know you're involved a lot in sort of outside tutoring and providing courses and things like that. What would you do to kind of, you know, encourage people to, you know, take advantage of those things and move forward with them?
Well, it's a tough decision to know exactly which tool you should focus on in a very palpable sense. Like you start tomorrow school, uni, and you are exposed to a lot of softwares and like which one is the best, and then you open social media, it's like they use that one, they use that one, so which one wins? And that's very tough for students. The more softwares we have, the more complicated it is for a student to decide. I usually say, and I've been saying it this whole time, that there is usually a software that expresses your intentions better than the other one. There's not one software that is better than the other one, but there is one that expresses you better and that enables you better to become a better professional. And the competition is to find that software for you. That's kind of the marathon. It is what's for me. And then obviously you need to be smart and to think about the office that you want to join one day and probably check which software they do. But still, I wouldn't go back to uni and learn the software that they do from the beginning. If you know that that's the office you want to join a year before, you probably learn that software in a year or you learn it in 3 months. So find a software that enables you to become a better professional, and then if you have to adapt to another one to be hired, then adapt. That is not very hard. Embracing tools is very important, and I think one of the reasons why we have been so obsessed with talking about tools lately, I think it's because of AI. We know that AI is a gigantic tool, and there's this question that is in the air of should I embrace it, should I not embrace it, and I'm fully convinced that you should embrace it, and I'm one of the most skeptical ones. But the reality is, like, you either embrace AI or AI will eventually embrace you.
How much of just seeing your work online, it seems like there is quite a very sort of strong community of people around this. How important do you think that is? There are a lot of passionate kind of young architects and, people that are interested in testing these tools and that way of sort of form finding, parametricism and things like that. How much of that has been built about by this sort of strong community?
Gigantic. And it's also what sets me apart from most of architects. I think it is the fact that I built a community of people who identify or that are able to celebrate and to acknowledge your effort, and to probably they would like to think that they would want someone who works hard to be successful, because you do have a way of working smarter, not harder. And then I believe, unfortunately, I'm on the harder and smarter, but extremely hard. And that brings a lot of people close to you because they acknowledge that effort. It also comes from your upbringing and so on. So, like I mentioned, as a Portuguese Cristiano Ronaldo mentality, work harder. And some people acknowledge that. I do as well. And that created a community.
Yeah, it's a really interesting sort of reflection. And are there other points about your sort of early career and your kind of careers so far that you can maybe reflect on and pick out any sort of key pieces of advice for young people moving forward?
I think the gender was extremely important, I believe, to be so uncommon, fortunately and unfortunately, and I cannot outrule that. I would be very unfair. And that would mean to have the bravery of being in a field that is dominated by gender that is not yours, but still, going for it. Like, I don't care. I'm the only one in the room. I don't care. I'm the only one speaking for most of the events on my side of gender. I don't care. I do it anyway. And that kind of brings people even closer to you, as in, like, you don't care and you're going to go push harder for it. And I like to believe that I have a strong community of girls who see that and that are inspired or triggered by that, and that makes them want to do it as well. So I have to definitely pinpoint that the gender side of things is extremely important, and I hope to be helping it change. And then I think there's another thing in this architecture's kind of community is I seek no stardom. I seek no, I don't believe that people are better than others. I'm a true believer that in the end, the pawn and the queen go to the same box. Like, we are literally here for this specific amount of time. No one is better than the other one at all. You mean exactly the same as the one who's on the other side of the room. And I think that passes through. And that makes me connect with people on a different level, I'd like to believe.
Wonderful. In terms of your practice, what are we hoping to see next? What's your kind of plans for the future?
I really hope to be embedded in the extended reality.
Mm.
I like the physical, and I have gigantic buildings coming, and they're like really big, but it is a fucked up field, like completely. It's a totally messed up industry. It's messed up, and the higher I go, the more I see the mess up, and the third parties, and the fourth parties, and the fifth parties, and it was just kind of corrupted in its own way, because it's also a very old profession. And the extended reality is setting grounds, and I'd like to be in the beginning when it's not messed up yet. And I really want to be on virtual experiences, virtual reality, extending ourselves to a better virtual world that does not replace the physical, but it's being driven for the right reasons.
Just to wrap up, has your career turned out how you imagined? You know, I'm thinking back to your early days in Portugal. Could you ever have imagined that you were designing, you know, cities of the future in a kind of virtual world?
It's a very good question, because the way things end up happening, you don't control them, and it actually unmasks a lot of very good professionals. And the reality is, you do not plan 90% of the things that happen to you, and it is an artistry to make it seem like it was envisioned and planned by you. And I'm a true believer that intelligence is the ability to adapt, and this is Piaget, and I live with a psychologist, and that's my family. So I always heard this, and then I understood that there's even another level of that these days, which is the art of showing that your ability to adapt came with no effort. And that's kind of an art form that I learned with time. And it does feel like it was planned, that it was envisioned, that it is structured. But I believe that 90% of the successful professionals adapt really well and made it look like a show. Yeah. And that's me.
I think I'd agree with you there. Perfect. Thank you so much for our conversation.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Cheers.
But right now, we are building an airport for Saudi, a gigantic one. And I'm directing the project, but what is giving me the most pleasure is directing the team, and the team is phenomenal. They are good. I usually ask people when they're doing their projects, is this the best that you have done so far? And I ask them individually, do you feel that this project is the best you've done so far? And you can tell that they answer with pride that that's it. They have never produced anything as good. It's every day I look at the screens on the meeting, I'm like, oh my God. Everyone's screen sharing is like absolutely. So right now, the Saudi project, it might be the project that I'm most proud of, the one that I like the most. With all due respect to my other project babies, but this one is probably the one that I like.